One night, a woman named Ada woke up to find a figure sitting at the foot of her bed. It stared at her with hollow eyes before disappearing into thin air. She screamed, waking her family, but there was nothing they could do. Similar incidents began happening throughout the village. The elders, who once guided the community, were now powerless. "The spirits are angry beyond words," said Mama Ngozi. "Our connection to them has been broken." The villagers began to realize that the spirits were no longer just angry. They were invading their lives, erasing the line between the living and the dead. The elders decided to hold a meeting with the entire village. They asked everyone to gather in the central square, despite the fear that gripped them. Mama Ngozi spoke with a heavy heart. "We have broken the sacred balance. We must ask the spirits for forgiveness before it is too late." The elders prepared offerings, yams, fruits, and palm wine, and went to the cemetery to plead with the spirits. They chanted prayers and poured libations on the ground, begging for peace. But there was no response. The villagers watched from a distance, their hope fading. When the elders returned, their faces were grim. "The spirits are not listening," said Papa Anya. "Their anger is too great. We must prepare for worse." The village, once vibrant and full of life, felt like a shadow of its former self. Even the elders, who had always been a source of strength, seemed defeated. The spirits began leaving the cemetery entirely. At night, villagers saw them wandering the streets, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Some roamed aimlessly, while others stood still, staring at houses as if searching for something or someone. Ezi and his friends were terrified. Every night, they felt the spirit's presence growing closer. One evening, Chika swore he saw a spirit standing at his window, its hollow eyes fixed on him. He ran to Ezi's house, trembling. "They're coming for us," he said. The spirit's wandering brought new fears to the village. People no longer walked outside after dark, and even during the day, they felt uneasy. It was as if the village itself had become a place for the dead, and the living were intruders in their own home. One morning, villagers went to the stream to fetch water, only to find it black and foul-smelling. The water, once clear and fresh, had turned undrinkable. The villagers were horrified. "Even the land is rejecting us," said one woman. People had to travel far to find clean water, adding to their suffering. Some believed the spirits had cursed the stream as punishment, while others thought it was a warning to leave the village entirely. Ezi and his friends felt the weight of their guilt grow heavier. They avoided the stream, fearing they might see something unnatural in its depths. But no matter how far they went, they could not escape the consequences of their actions. One by one, Eze and his friends began to notice strange marks on their skin. The marks looked like scratches or burns, but they had no memory of being hurt. The elders immediately recognized these marks as a sign of spiritual punishment. "The spirits have marked you," Mama Ngozi told them. "You carry their anger with you." The boys tried to hide the marks, but they could not stop them from spreading. Soon, the entire village knew the truth. The villagers turned on Ee and his friends, blaming them for everything that had happened. Some demanded they leave the village, while others called for them to make amends. But no one knew how to fix what had been broken. The village began to fall apart. People stopped trusting each other, and divisions grew. Some wanted to follow the old ways and try to appease the spirits, while others believed it was too late and wanted to leave. Families argued, and friends turned against each other. Even the elders disagreed on what to do. The once close-knit community was now divided, and the spirit's anger only deepened the rift. Eze and his friends became outcasts. They stayed on the outskirts of the village, avoiding everyone. But no matter where they went, the spirits followed, reminding them of their mistake. As the weeks passed, the village grew darker, literally. The sun seemed dimmer, and the nights were pitch black. Even the stars, once bright and comforting, seemed to vanish. The villagers felt as if they were living in a shadow, cut off from the world. Plants stopped growing, animals disappeared, and the land became barren. The villagers, once proud of their vibrant home, now felt like they were living in a cursed wasteland. Ease and his friends realized the full weight of what they had done. Their one act of defiance had not only cursed them, but had brought ruin to the entire village. The spirits, once protectors and guides, were now enemies. The balance was broken, and the future looked bleak. One night, a powerful spirit appeared before the elders during a meeting. Its presence filled the room with cold air, and the lamps flickered as though afraid of its light. It spoke in a deep, haunting voice that echoed in their ears. "You have broken the sacred bond between the living and the dead," the spirit said. "The balance cannot be restored without great sacrifice. You must offer what is dearest to you to appease us." The elders trembled, understanding the weight of the demand. The spirit wanted the villagers to give up something significant, perhaps their land, their lives, or even their children. Mama Ngozi asked, "What must we do to make peace?" But the spirit gave no clear answer. It simply said, "You will know when the time comes," before vanishing into the darkness. The villagers were terrified. What could they offer to the spirits to restore balance? And who would be willing to make such a sacrifice? The village held a meeting to discuss the spirit's demand. The elders explained what had happened, but their words were met with anger and fear. "Why should we sacrifice anything?" shouted one man. "We didn't eat in the cemetery. Why should we pay for their sins?" The villagers argued for hours. Some believed they should make an offering, while others said it was too late to fix what had been broken. Aze and his friends, now marked as the source of the curse, sat silently at the edge of the gathering. They knew the villagers blamed them, but they were too afraid to speak. In the end, the villagers decided to wait. They hoped the spirits would leave on their own. But the spirits were not done. Their silence was not forgiveness. It was the calm before a greater storm. The spirits began possessing villagers. It started with small incidents, people speaking in strange voices or staring blankly into space. But soon it became worse.
Some villagers would act violently, attacking their own families or destroying their homes. The elders recognized the signs. "The spirits are using our bodies to express their anger," said Mama Ngozi. "They are no longer content to haunt us. They want to control us." The possessed villagers were taken to the elders, who tried to perform cleansing rituals. But the rituals failed, and the spirits refused to leave. The possessed grew weaker each day, their bodies unable to handle the burden of the spirit's presence. The village was falling apart, and no one knew how to stop it. The villagers began to notice that the graves of their ancestors were changing. Tombstones cracked, and the ground around the graves became dry and lifeless. It was as though the ancestors themselves had turned their backs on the living. Mama Ngozi wept as she stood before her mother's grave. "Our ancestors were our protectors," she said, "but we have failed them. They have abandoned us to the spirit's wrath." The villagers felt the loss deeply. Without the guidance of their ancestors, they were vulnerable to the spirit's anger. It was a devastating blow to their faith and their sense of identity. The bond between the living and the dead, once a source of strength, was now a source of fear and despair. With the spirit's anger growing, the villagers stopped practicing their traditions. No one sang the old songs or performed the dances that once brought joy. Even the festivals, which had been a time of unity, were abandoned. The village became silent and somber. The elders, once respected and followed, were now ignored. Some villagers turned to outsiders for help, seeking answers in foreign religions and practices. Others simply gave up, believing there was no hope. Eze and his friends felt the weight of their guilt more than ever. They had not only angered the spirits, but had also destroyed the village's way of life. The community that had once been so strong was now divided and broken. One evening the sun set, but it did not rise again. The village was plunged into darkness. Even during the day, the sky remained black, as though the spirits had stolen the light. The villagers lit fires and lamps, but the darkness seemed to swallow the light. People stayed indoors, afraid to venture outside. The once lively village now felt like a ghost town. Easy and his friends stayed together, too afraid to face the villagers or the spirits. They knew the endless night was a sign. The spirits were taking control. The balance between the living and the dead was gone, and the village was paying the price. The land itself began to change. Crops would not grow, animals fled, and the streams dried up. The once fertile soil turned to dust and the trees withered. The villagers could no longer sustain themselves. Desperation drove some to leave the village in search of a better life. But those who left reported seeing shadows following them, as though the spirits were not bound to the village. Even outside the village, the spirits' curse lingered. The elders tried one last time to appease the spirits, but their prayers went unanswered. The land had become a place for the dead, and the living were no longer welcome. The villagers began to see the spirits not as their ancestors, but as enemies. The sacred bond that had once united the living and the dead was broken forever. The spirits, feeling betrayed and disrespected, refused to return to peace. The villagers stopped visiting the cemetery entirely. It became a place of fear, a reminder of the curse that had destroyed their lives. Even those who had once believed in the old ways began to doubt. Ize and his friends, now isolated and filled with regret, realized the full extent of their actions. They had not only cursed themselves, but had also destroyed the harmony between the living and the dead. The spirits, restless and angry, began to spread beyond the village. Neighboring communities reported seeing strange figures and hearing eerie sounds at night. The curse was no longer contained. It was infecting the surrounding lands. The villagers who had fled to escape the curse found no refuge. The spirits followed them, ensuring they could not escape their punishment. The once small act of defiance had unleashed a force that could not be stopped. The surrounding villages began to fear the cursed village, avoiding it entirely. The villagers, now isolated, were left to face the consequences of their actions alone. The village, once vibrant and full of life, was now a shadow of its former self. The spirits roamed freely and the living lived in constant fear. The land was barren, the people were divided, and the traditions that had once guided them were forgotten. Ize and his friends, now sick and broken, knew there was no redemption for them. Their defiance had not only destroyed their lives, but had also cursed their community and the surrounding lands.